Today, we're going to talk about building modern, reusable user interfaces on the web. And we're going to do it by diving into web components, which are, honestly, one of the most powerful and elegant ways to get the job done. So let's see how it all works by starting with something we see every day.
Okay, let's start by peeling back the layers on something we all use constantly without even thinking about it, the simple HTML button tag. I mean, it seems so basic, right? But it's actually a little masterpiece of engineering that we get for free.
I mean, just think about everything that comes packed into a single button tag. Out of the box, the browser knows how to make it accessible, it works with a keyboard, screen readers know exactly what it is, it even has built-in states like disabled and focused. That right there, that's the gold standard we're aiming for when we build our own stuff.
That native button is fantastic for sure. But, we often need components that are way more specialized. And that brings us to the whole reason we're here, the idea of building our very own HTML tags.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if you could just invent a product card or a special modal that had all the power, all the reusability, and all that baked-in goodness of a native element? Well, the cool thing is, you actually can.
And this is how we do it. The first piece of the puzzle is something called custom elements. It's a web standard that lets us, as developers, define brand new, fully featured HTML tags, give them whatever behaviors we want, and wrap it all up neatly inside a JavaScript class.
Okay, so we've made our own custom tag. That's awesome. But a really well-designed component, kind of like any good piece of technology, hides its complexity. You don't want to see all the messy wires inside. So let's talk about how we hide those messy internal parts.
This question is absolutely crucial. I mean, if you've ever had CSS from one part of a page accidentally leak out and just completely break the layout of another part, you know this pain. So how do we build a fortress around our components' internals so that nothing gets in and nothing gets out?
The answer is a brilliant feature called the shadow DOM. The best way to think about it is like a secret private world that exists only for our component. The styles and the HTML inside this shadow tree are completely locked away, totally isolated. They won't mess up the main page, and the main page's styles won't mess them up. It's true encapsulation.
So to really get this, you need to understand the difference between what we call the light DOM and the shadow DOM. The light DOM, well, that's the public part. That's the content that someone using your component puts inside it. But the shadow DOM, that's private. That's all the internal machinery that the component's author built. One is the content, the other is the implementation.
So how do these two worlds, the public one and the private one, actually talk to each other? Well, they connect using a really clever element called a slot. A slot is basically a portal. It grabs the content you put in the light DOM and projects it into a specific placeholder inside the private shadow DOM. This is what makes our components flexible and composable.
Okay, so having all this power is amazing, but it comes with some responsibility. A great component doesn't just work in a vacuum. It has to work well with everything else on the page. In other words, it has to play nicely with others.
So here are a few key rules of the road. Number 1, always use a shadow root. Encapsulate your stuff. Number 2, use slots so that people can put their own content inside your component. 3, make sure your JavaScript properties and your HTML attributes stay in sync. And maybe most importantly, be a good citizen. Respect the developer using your component. Don't just stomp on global attributes they might have set, like tab index or a role.
And all of this really comes back to one fundamental idea: semantics. This quote from the Mozilla Developer Network just hits the nail on the head. So much of accessibility isn't some complex extra step. It's just about using the right HTML for the right job from the very beginning.
So why is that so important? Because your browser is actually doing double duty. It's not just building the visual page that you see, it's also building this other thing in parallel called the accessibility tree. It's a special version of your UI built just for assistive technologies like screen readers. And when you use the right HTML tags, you're making sure that tree gets built correctly for everyone.
All right, now that we've got the fundamentals down, let's look at how these core ideas are evolving to solve some of the biggest, trickiest challenges we face on the modern web.
So here's a classic problem that's been a headache for years. If we have to wait for JavaScript to run in the browser just to create our component's shadow DOM and apply its styles, what happens on that first page load? Well, you risk that ugly flash of unstyled content and a pretty sluggish experience, especially on slower connections.
And the solution to this is called declarative shadow DOM. It's fantastic. Instead of that old imperative JavaScript approach, we can now just declare our shadow root right in the HTML that comes from the server. Look at the difference. This means the component renders instantly, styled correctly, even before the JavaScript loads. No more flash of unstyled content. It's a massive win for performance.
Okay, here's another real-world headache, especially if you've ever worked on a really big application. For the longest time, all custom element names had to be unique across the entire page. So imagine one team defines icon button, and then another team, or maybe a third-party library, tries to define their own icon button. Boom, the second one fails. It's a recipe for conflict. The solution to this is a feature that is, frankly, a total game changer. It's called Scoped Custom Element Registries, and it basically means that every shadow root can have its own private, local list of custom element definitions. This means my icon button can live happily inside my component, and your icon button can live inside yours, and they'll never even know about each other. It's true modularity, and it finally solves the naming collision problem for good.
So let's just quickly recap the big ideas here. Web components give us true encapsulation through the shadow DOM. They give us powerful composition using the light DOM and slots. They give us incredible reusability with custom elements, and when we build them on a solid foundation of semantics, they deliver an amazing, accessible experience for everyone. Which really leaves us with one final and pretty exciting thought. The browser is literally giving us the same exact tools that its own engineers use to build native elements like button and video. The power to extend the web platform is now in our hands. The only question left is, what amazing thing